Tonight, immigrants flooding into Florida.
They take people to doctor's appointments, they help them to get to school.
How the church is working to help and offer hope to new arrivals. Plus, the role faith will play in the coronation of King Charles III. And urban warfare, how the residents of Taiwan are preparing for a possible invasion from China. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Immigration in the spotlight in America. Good evening in Washington. I'm Jenna Browder. With the immigrant crisis at the southern border, states across the country are considering how to deal with immigration. In Florida, lawmakers passed a sweeping bill aimed at penalizing undocumented migrants. Early drafts raised red flags with many pastors over religious liberty concerns. CBN's Heather Sells has more on what the bill means for those who minister to new migrant arrivals in the Sunshine State.
Immigrants from around the world are flooding into Florida. It's why many churches have stepped up their ministries to serve newcomers. Pastor Dale Schaefer oversees the Florida district of the Church of the Nazarene.
Many of our churches have transportation ministries, right? They take people to doctor's appointments, they help them to get to school. Many of our churches provide transportation to and from worship.
That's one reason the immigration bill announced by Governor Ron DeSantis caught Schaefer and other pastors off guard. It would have made knowingly transporting someone with no legal status a third-degree felony.
If you hold people accountable, they're not going to want to do this.
The governor has argued the bill would help to reduce illegal migration, but pastors worried it would impinge on their ministry and threaten their religious freedom. The final bill partially addresses that concern by limiting the felony charge to those who transport an undocumented migrant into the state. The broad sweeping measure cracks down on illegal immigration on multiple fronts. It mandates tough restrictions on ID cards and driver's licenses for those who can't prove citizenship. And it requires hospitals that accept Medicaid to ask patients about their legal status. The bill's sponsor hopes the legislation will become a model for the country.
It should be the blueprint for the other 50 states.
In recent weeks, some pastors had spoken out alongside the evangelical immigration table, flagging what they feared could become an obstacle to living out their faith and showing compassion.
Jesus never asked anyone what their status was, right? The parable of the Good Samaritan is an incredible example, right? This man, the Samaritan, stops to help this man, asks him no question, says, "Put the cost on me."
A spokesman for World Relief said he's concerned that the bill initially disregarded religious liberty. "I'm troubled that it took the outspoken advocacy of Christian pastors to flag that churches should be able to minister freely to all," he said, without being at risk of imprisonment for performing basic ministry functions like driving someone to church. Reporting in Orlando, Heather Sells, CBN News.
Thank you, Heather. Title 42, the COVID-era immigration policy, expires next week. And in light of that, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas is in Texas visiting the southern border, where they are preparing for a major surge of migrants. To date, Republicans on the Hill have accused the Biden administration of being absent on border policy and not properly preparing for the policy to end. The Biden administration is rolling out a fast-track screening process for immigrants at the border to prepare for Title 42 ending. Meanwhile, Senators Tom Tillis and Kirsten introduced a bipartisan bill that mimics Title 42 and would allow the president to temporarily extend the quick expulsions. And with that, let's bring in Julia Manchester, national politics reporter for The Hill. Julia, good to have you this Friday. So this measure that would allow border agents to continue expelling migrants post-Title 42, how likely is it Congress might be able to get this done?
I think it's unlikely at this point in time, at least before Title 42. I think if this were to be done, it would happen after that. And even then, we know that immigration has historically been a very sticky point of contention for Congress. I mean, right now you have an independent senator, Kirsten, who recently left the Democratic Party, and Tom Tillis, a Republican senator. So we don't know if they're necessarily going to come to a compromise, but this is all happening in the backdrop of as we're going into a major presidential election year where Republicans are looking to go on the offensive against the Biden administration, Democrats on immigration. It's hard for me right now how they can get the 60 votes unless there's some real deal making that is eventually made going forward.
As you mentioned, this is going to be a big issue in 2024. Republicans are going to be hammering the Biden administration and their handling of the crisis at the border. For their part, Julia, President Biden and his administration, do you think they'll change tacks? Do they kind of have to go stronger on the border, or what do you see them doing as we head into 2024, and what will their message be?
Yeah, look, I already think they're starting to be more vocal on the situation at the southern border. The fact that Alejandro Mayorkas is going there and is appearing at the border is a major step. We know that a lot of Biden administration officials haven't really been pictured with the border. Instead, you have a number of Republican lawmakers and such going there and tweeting back videos or posting videos. But they're not only under pressure from Republicans, we're also seeing a number of Democrats raising the alarm. Congressman Ruben Gallego, a progressive who's running for Senate in Arizona, he's saying that the situation at the border is not good, that the Biden administration needs to act. And you even have New York City Mayor Eric Adams, a moderate Democrat, who is also making this point. So the Biden administration is under pressure from both sides at this point.
Yeah. Julia, at the Supreme Court, there's growing concern and scrutiny over Justice Clarence Thomas's relationship with a GOP mega donor. It's being reported that this mega donor paid the private school tuition for Thomas's great nephew. It gets kind of sticky because while Thomas is said to have really raised this boy as his own son, federal ethics laws don't require him to report that gift since he's not actually his son. Where do you see this going, Julia?
Yeah, look, I think we're going to see these legal questions, or I think pressure from Democrats, I should say, for the Supreme Court to adopt a code of ethics, because that's really at the root of this issue here, the Democrats wanting them to do this. I think they're going to continue to push for that. And you're going to see, Chief Justice John Roberts in particular under a lot of pressure, because it seems like there's this drip, drip, drip when it comes to Clarence Thomas. Look, there's also questions about, payments made to his wife, Ginny Thomas, who's a conservative activist. So you're seeing a lot of pressure being put on the court to adopt this ethics code. However, I would say that, conservatives and defenders of Clarence Thomas would say this is partisanship coming from Democrats. But overall, this is coming at a time when, the Supreme Court approval rating, which normally is relatively high, is very low. And look, the Supreme Court is supposed to be an institution that is nonpartisan, but we've seen that isn't the case anymore.
All right. Julia Manchester with The Hill. Always good to see you. Happy Friday, Julia. Have a great weekend. All right, turning overseas tonight, a new chapter begins in the United Kingdom tomorrow with the coronation of King Charles III. As both monarch and the head of the Church of England, Charles has promised to be defender of the faith. But he's made clear he sees the role as more defender of all faiths, not just Christianity. The coronation is one of the biggest royal events of our time, and while Buckingham Palace is keeping quiet on most of the details, we are hearing a few things. It's been 70 years since the last coronation. Just like Queen Elizabeth's in 1953, this will be at London's Westminster Abbey and keep mostly with tradition.
It is, of course, primarily a religious service. There's no constitutional need for the coronation. Charles became king as soon as his mother died back in September.
King Charles, though, is expected to add his own touches, which include some new religious aspects.
It's very significant indeed. The last coronation of the late Queen in 1953 was almost entirely run by Anglican clergy, the male clergy of the Church of England.
Ian Bradley with the University of St. Andrews School of Divinity tells CBN News more Christian denominations will be included this time. And for the first time, Charles will include other faiths as well.
So one of the things that's happened recently is that the order of service was delayed. And we're pretty sure it was delayed because Charles wanted a group of representatives of other faiths to lead the prayers. But there's a rule in the Church of England, it's part of the Church's law, and it's backed up by Parliament's law, that to lead the liturgy in an Anglican church, you have to be a believing Anglican. So there was a conflict, and it looks like Charles lost.
Now, instead of leading prayers, Muslim, Hindu, Sikh, and Jewish leaders will present the king with 4 pieces of coronation regalia. Gavin Ashenden once served as chaplain to the late Queen. Can you tell us about her faith and how she viewed her role and how that might compare to King Charles?
Faith was very important to her, and we know this from her Christmas broadcasts. They increasingly were personal and very faithful, and although she was advised, she would have written them essentially herself.
He says no one's quite sure about King Charles's private beliefs.
Well, we've had one Christian Christmas broadcast, but he was brought up under the influence of Carl Gustav Jung. A man called Lawrence van der Post was his tutor. So he's much more committed to a more progressive agenda than Christianity is comfortable with. And I think one of the tensions we're going to see both in the coronation service and in his reign is the way in which he tries to balance his Christianity, being defender of the Protestant faith, with his sense that he needs to reflect a secular, progressive worldview that his subjects have adopted or are part of.
But Ashenden says not knowing the monarch's personal beliefs is not necessarily a bad thing.
If you have a king or a queen, you don't necessarily want to know what their private views are, because they may then only represent one half of their kingdom instead of the other. It becomes polarizing, like politics.
And thousands are expected to line the streets tomorrow morning as King Charles and his wife, Queen Consort Camilla, make their way from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Abbey. The ceremony starts at 11 a.m. local time. That's 6 a.m. on the East Coast. A polarizing political atmosphere creeping its way into the church. Coming up, the fight to bring unity back into the pews.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel, now available at cbnradio.com.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs from health to entertainment you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. To watch the CBN News Channel, download the app or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back. Political and cultural divisions are stoking the flames of division in America, even within the church. So how can unity be restored, not only in our nation, but also within the faith? Gary Lane spoke with a couple of pastors to explore the answer.
Political disagreements over Donald Trump and Joe Biden and a potentially hostile election season are fracturing America. The country is polarized and deeply divided over politics and culture. And the divisions have even crept into the church. Pastor Dan Darling addresses the problem in his most recent book, Agents of Grace, how to bridge divides and love as Jesus loved.
Christians are sadly, in many ways, we're reflecting the world and the fact that we're just as divided as everyone else. But, Jesus calls us to something better. He said that the world would know that we are his by the way we love each other.
Doctrinal issues are dividing denominations. Southern Baptists are at odds over the role of women in the pulpit. And disagreement over homosexual leaders in the church has split the United Methodist Church. Darling believes the Methodists are dealing with a cultural issue that's in conflict with biblical teachings and should not change church doctrine.
When you talk about sexual ethics, this is pretty clear in Scripture. It's something that Christians can't yield on, that we have to be resolute and stand for it with courage and with compassion, with courage and civility.
Pastor David Anderson is founder of Gracism Global, an organization committed to bridging divides in culture, faith, race, and wealth. He says leaders of both major political parties stoke anger and leverage division on issues like race and abortion when real solutions are needed.
What we have to ask is, how do you get to the bottom line of getting less abortions? How do you get to the bottom line of saying this is what God's ideal is, but this is the real that we live in?
And what is the role of the church? Darling urges Christians to stand for truth and show love for their neighbor, especially when they disagree. So, Dan, how do we disagree well?
Well, I think we disagree well by saying, when it's among Christians, to say, look, this brother or sister I disagree with on this. Here's why. But I love them, not back down on what we believe, but also we can treat our neighbors and see them as God sees them, as people made in the image of God and people for whom Jesus died.
Anderson contends America needs leaders who can bridge the real and the ideal.
What we need are bridge builders, and we need healers to say, listen, I understand both sides, but how can we go forward? Instead of left, instead of right, how do we go higher? And I think that's what we're called to as believers.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
Thank you, Gary. Up next, the threat of China attacking Taiwan, how civilians are preparing in the event of war.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Wednesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Tikkun Olam.
This is our nature as a country.
To make the world a better place.
Literally, we felt the earth shaking.
The Christian Broadcasting Network presents To Life, how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
This film needs to be seen by everyone.
I was in tears.
Now you can own the inspiring documentary To Life on DVD.
There is blood on our hands if we know and we walk away.
I'm so grateful that this film was made.
To Life can be yours for a gift of $10 or more. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com.
We know that every minute counts to save life.
It'll bless Israel, but it'll also bless all the friends of Israel.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are making the world a better place. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com to get your copy today.
First aid, urban warfare, and guerrilla tactics. Civilians in Taiwan are signing up for combat training in preparation for an invasion by China. Dozens of private companies are also on the island are also offering classes to develop a corps of civilian warriors. George Thomas has more from Tapai.
For Carl Kuo, China's intention to take Taiwan by military force looks and feels more real with each coming day.
Turn on the news, and almost every day you hear how tensions between China and Taiwan are escalating.
The 24-year-old Taipei native runs this shop in a popular market area of the city. He says Beijing's military drills simulating a total blockade of Taiwan have his family thinking about how to prepare for war.
We've discussed taking basic weapons training, getting more money out of the bank, storing some food supplies, and planning a possible escape route.
Many here worry that if war comes, this thriving democracy in a strategic corner of Southeast Asia will be extinguished.
We don't want to lose our way of life. Taiwan is a very friendly city, very friendly island, and people are good to each other. It's a democratic society where the leaders are elected, not by military force.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine last year sent a chill across this island nation of 23 million people, with some drawing comparisons between Putin's obsession with taking over its neighbor and Xi Jinping's determination to annex Taiwan. A popular saying among people here is Ukraine today, Taiwan tomorrow.
5 generations of the Communist Party leaders had always put unification as one of their priorities. They were incapable of delivering that, but Xi Jinping is a different person. And Xi Jinping believed that right now probably is the peak of the Chinese power.
And that's why many Taiwanese point to Ukraine's continued resistance against a much bigger invading army.
The unity displayed by all Ukrainians has been inspiring to us, and it should also serve as a warning to China that they should think twice about attacking us.
Polls show an overwhelming majority of people here, over 70%, willing to defend Taiwan against any China invasion. Taiwan has been paying very close attention ever since Russia began its military offensive against Ukraine back on February 24th. And as this island nation prepares for a potential invasion by her neighbor, China, the one thing they're focusing on, just like they did in Ukraine in the initial opening days of the war, is the idea of creating a Taiwanese civilian defense force. And that idea led to an explosion of private companies here offering defense classes to civilians.
The key to the international community's intervention in the possible conflict in the Taiwan Strait is Taiwan's determination to defend itself. The war in Ukraine by Russia has confirmed such a theory. Only when the people have shown their strong determination to defend themselves and act on it can they convince the international community to help them.
Record numbers are taking classes on how to provide first aid.
At each session, we would ask trainees why they would attend first aid classes. Many would mention concerns about the war in Ukraine. So they start to ask themselves, I am a civilian. What can I do to help? What can I do for myself, for my family, or what can I do for others?
Others are learning urban guerrilla warfare tactics to protect their neighborhoods.
Although I was enlisted for 2 years, I feel that what I've learned is insufficient to meet modern wars. So I found a place to train and reinforce my knowledge. If one day something happens, I could probably be able to return home safe.
Taiwan has only about 170,000 active soldiers, compared to China's nearly 2 million strong army, the largest in the world. The island nation, however, has a larger, well-trained military reserve force than China, numbering about 1.5 million, in case Beijing decides to attack. Still, Taiwanese businessman Robert Xiao says that's not enough. The tech billionaire is pouring millions of his personal wealth into training and equipping some 3 million civilian warriors in the next 3 years to defend their island home. Admiral Lee Si-ming, former head of Taiwan's armed forces, tells CBN News that his nation needs an immediate move toward a resilient and united society like Ukraine to face a menacing and dangerous neighbor.
If you really can develop this kind of the willingness develop this kind of capabilities, then the enemy, the China will consider even they can destroy our Navy and the Air Force is successfully landed on our territory. They still need to fight against our regular forces and a lot of the kind of civilian defense forces.
Last week, China and Taiwan held dueling military drills as tensions continue to rise, as China deployed several dozen ships and planes to simulate sealing off the island. Taiwan's army held exercises with tanks, armored vehicles, and Humvees on the southern part of the island. This all comes as Beijing claims it is ready to fight foreign interference in the region, as well as any Taiwanese attempt to gain independence. George Thomas, CBN News, Taipei, Taiwan.
Thank you, George. And still ahead, from racehorse to police force. You're watching CBN's Faith Nation.
It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Heavenly Father, we do thank you for the work of your Spirit, Lord God, with this movement of getting the Bible,
yes,
Lord, into public schools.
Watch The Prayer Link. Tuesday morning at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel. Get Protect Your Sleep and discover how to improve the quality of your life. A free DVD or booklet from the Christian Broadcasting Network.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
5 leading experts help remove the obstacles between you and restorative sleep.
When you don't get a restful night's sleep, you wake up with an accumulation of stress.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free DVD or booklet today.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
You'll discover how food affects your sleep, how to put insomnia to rest, explore effective remedies for sleep apnea, and much more in Protect Your Sleep. Wake up to your best life and get Protect Your Sleep today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free DVD or booklet.
Finally tonight, from racehorse to police force. The Kentucky Derby is tomorrow. Of course, throughout history, there have been many storied racehorses. One of the most famous, perhaps, Secretariat. And now one of Secretariat's descendants is making a name for himself, but in a different way. Meet Rupp, a former racehorse sidelined by an injury. He's now enjoying life as a police horse. Rupp is a member of the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office Mounted Patrol Unit, and we're told a fan favorite in the community. And it's a big weekend, the Kentucky Derby, the coronation of King Charles, whatever it is you'll be doing. We hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday.